Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, boys and girls. Welcome once again to Tuesday evening at 8:30 on the East Coast and 7:30 on the Texas coast, because it's Texas and they have their own coast over there. Actually, that's not really a joke. They actually do. This part of the Gulf of Mexico. Anyway, where was I? Yes, welcome once again to the most edutainment podcast about Islam and living it in today's society. And all of the topics that we cover on this show are picked by you, our audience, our Twitter followers. And tonight's episode is no different than the others, where you, our Twitter followers, have chosen the topic, and I'm starting to babble a little bit. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the hardest working imam that I know, Imam Azhar.
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to all our listeners here tonight on Facebook Live. We welcome you to another episode of Raw Islam with Imam Azhar and Brother Carl as we engage with you in the topics that you have chosen and selected this week for us to discuss. For those who don't know, on a weekly basis, Brother Carl sends out a tweet from Venn Network, and also he retweets it from his personal Twitter feed, asking the people what topic they feel that we should be discussing on this week's podcast. And out of the selections, whatever has the most votes, we then, alhamdulillah, discuss it, and we begin that topic here at Raw Islam with Imam Azhar. And I want you all to understand that when I say we begin the topic, is because we're not here lecturing or preaching. Rather, we're trying to spark dialogues and discussions, which can continue to sow seeds within other forms and other discussion areas. May they be personal, maybe they be community-based, whether it be at home or at a center amongst friends or family members, where these discussions could actually take this topic up a notch, and we could bring forth some real solutions if it is a problem. We could bring forth understanding if there is darkness, and we can shed light on matters that people don't know about. So that being said, I'm going to turn it back to Brother Carl, who will let us know what it is that we're going to be talking about this week.
Maybe. Hold on.
Suspense.
The suspense. Dun, 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 dun. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, as Imam Azhar said, everything he said is correct, because that's why he's the host of the show, because he's always correct. He's shaking his head no in disappointment with me. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, this week's poll, which was sent out on Twitter from the handle at Venn Network, that's 3 N's. Our topics for you to choose from were George H. Bush and the 80s, how to raise your kids, and what's the deal with, and we kind of left that blank, but that doesn't really matter, because as you can see, 100% of you chose that you would like to talk about how to raise your children. Now, when this topic was chosen, the reason I chose it and the way I did it was because there's a lot going on in the world, from fake news to what seems to be just this never-ending flow of hate and division and everything else. And we're Muslims, and we're supposed to be better than that, and we're supposed to rise above that, even though we have our own issues inside our community, but that's a different topic for a different time. So I wanted to let's talk about this. Let's address, how do we as Muslims be good parents and help raise our children in the situation, in the scenario that we're currently finding ourselves in. And I myself am a parent of 4 kids. Some are older, but they still need raising. They still need training and tutelage and everything else. So with that, over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Brother Carl, and thank you to our listeners for selecting a topic of discussion. As you know, we've reached past the 70th episode mark. I think this is our 71st. So inshallah,
Correct.
We're on our way. Sorry?
Correct.
Correct? So we're on our way to, inshallah, our 100th episode, 29 episodes from now. But remember, all these episodes, we're not talking about a certain theme. We're not talking about the life of the Prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him, nor are we talking about the Quran. We're talking about realistic issues, problems, scenarios that we all face in our world, in our society, and trying to incorporate religious teachings as part of the solution to those problems. And why not? When we live in a society where problems are brought forth in the name of religion, if that makes sense. Terrorism, an ideology that's being pushed with the author being religion. And of course, we know a religion doesn't prescribe such acts, nor does it support such violence, but people are using or forging the signature of religion to say that it is the demon causing the problem. Thus, I feel, and I think Brother Carl will agree with me, that we need to then use the truth of the religion to be part of the solution to it. Raising children, an amazing topic for an amazing time. When we talk about the problems in raising children, I think Carl alluded to the times and the situations. The question that I want to ask ourselves first is, are these problems new and are they now, or did these problems exist in the past? My thought process is these problems have always existed, but now we have certain methods and means and tools and instruments that can highlight those problems, that can amplify those problems, that can shed light on those problems. I don't know if I said it here before, but one day I was having lunch or dinner with a few of my friends, and one of them I had said, his response really stuck to me. I was saying that how in our world we're having so much violence. There's so much killing and murder and wars that this world has never seen before. And his response was, no, it's the same. It's actually not changed. And I'm like, how could you say that? Well, we had World War One, then we had World War Two, then we had Vietnam. He said, no, the thing was that this system of killing, putting people down, enslavement, human the atrocities that human beings commit on other human beings have been going on for the longest time. The only thing that has changed is the method in which we document it. In the past, people would find out much later that this thing happened. And maybe they would find out so much later that that problem no longer existed in that area in the way that it was. But now we can literally see the problems happening in Paris live. We can see the problems happening in Yemen live. We can see the bombs falling in different parts of the world live. We can actually see the aftermath and the after effect of what just transpired in that too live, because the tools are there. So the first thing I need to address, and I think we need our listeners to understand, is that raising children has always been a challenge. It's never a problem. It's been a challenge. And yes, there are certain factors within society that contribute towards that challenge, but that's the beauty of parenting. And that's the beauty of raising your children and family with certain values, because they can either strengthen that or they can weaken the challenge. If the challenge is standing out as being moral in a society that you may perceive as immoral, then that's actually standing for something. And if it is the challenge of trying not to be disrespectful in a society where disrespect is becoming a problem, then that's standing up against something. Long story short, Brother Carl, raising children is tough. You know it, I know it. You're a father, I'm a father also. We're both parents in our own ways. And in light of Christmas that's coming around, where the culture has been created that it's a time where Santa up north has a long list where he has the naughty and the nice. Those who are nice receive what, Carl? What do they receive?
They receive coal in their stocking, courtesy of the Trump administration, bringing coal to you and bringing coal back to society since 2016.
And that was for naughty, correct? Just correct me on this. That's for naughty.
Yes,
right?
that is for naughty.
Okay. Because I thought I asked about nice and I got a shock there, but...
Oh, did I misunderstand you? I'm sorry.
For nice, what is for nice?
They get presents and they get gifts and they get all kinds of nice, fun things. They get the gifts that they ask for because
And they ask who?
they ask Santa because it's because that's what he does up north. Is he has this whole factory where he has elves that are imprisoned working for slave labor to manufacture iPads for greedy little children. Am I doing this wrong? I don't understand.
So we got an Amazon of the North type of thing. I understand what you're trying to say. Sorry for saying that. Okay. It's important to point this out. There is now we know why the Trump administration wanted to revive the coal industry because there's a lot of coal to give out. We thought that was no longer a fuel that was required to keep our cities alive. But yeah, it's not for the sake of keeping our cities alive. It's for filling stockings. So yes.
Oh my God, we figured it out.
We figured it out. Carl and I, we're just a powerhouse, mashallah. We figure out these big complex problems in 2 seconds, if not 2 minutes. So alhamdulillah. Look at this problem right here we just highlighted. You're telling your children that there's someone up there who's a human being, not God. There's a human being who is going to determine and thus reward you or reprimand you with coal based on how you acted. So be good, Santa will give you a gift. Be bad, and Santa's not going to give you anything. Rather, he might give you stones or coal. This is the first problem in parenting. No, it's not Christianity. No, it's not Santa Claus. No, it's not the elves. No, it's not the North Pole. And no, it's not gifts or coal. The problem is that when we raise our children and we want them to be what other people may deem to be acceptable in their eyes, they can never be good for themselves. See, parenting is about transferring. It's like a PayPal account where Carl wants to send me money, mashallah. So Carl goes to me, can I have your PayPal account? And I give him that code and boom, money comes into my PayPal account. Carl didn't have to get up from his seat, nor did I have to go to an ATM or to a bank to receive those funds. It happened directly and automatically. In a similar fashion, parenting is a PayPal account where you're transferring values and goodness from you to your children. It's simple. But when we say, no, you have to be good like Santa wants you to be, or you have to be good like the principal wants you to be, or you have to be good in the eyes of the world and society, and we consider that we are not obligated as parents to be the ones transferring those values. Rather, they just need to find them, figure them out, and appease other people. This is the first and common mistake that's made in parenting. We have to transfer our values to our children, goodnesses to our children. And when we then do a inventory of what good we have, we may realize we don't have much. Thus, children inspire us to become better people so that we can transfer more to them and that they can take more with them as they continue the ripple effect, letting it go down for generations to come. So to summarize this one point, you are the key instruments and figures in your child's life to allow them to be those good people. Don't tell them to be good for someone else or good to someone else without giving them the goodness that will allow them to represent that goodness. This is, again, the main problem. And Carl, just throw it back to you if there's anything you have on your mind or if any of our listeners have any questions to this. And I have 2 more points to kind of cover tonight in regards to this topic. Before I do so, Carl, remember, this is a topic that requires more than a podcast, but I applaud our listeners for actually posing the question, because I think what we need sometimes is not long lectures or books that are written with multiple chapters. Rather, we just need that push. If we get that nudge and the push, the ball could start rolling in the right direction. And hopefully with other resources and other people, we can help better our stance and make our parenting more effective in the world that we live in today. Carl?
So, with all of that being said, I actually do want to clarify my coal joke, and I'm going to describe an image because that's how jokes always work best, especially when they're visual jokes. Before we came on the air, I was on Twitter and I saw a photo of Santa and Mrs. Claus standing on an iceberg that was melting away, and there was a big factory in the background that was obviously polluting the air. And Santa looked at Mrs. Claus and says, "We should have been giving solar panels out to the naughty kids instead of coal," which is why I made that joke. But beyond that, I would like to say salam to all our watchers and all our fans and everybody online. And we do actually have a question. Salam alaikum, Sister Layla. And thank you for joining us this evening. She says, Assalamu alaikum. She heard a scholar say that we shouldn't obligate our children to pray salah when it is time. What are your thoughts on that? Now, before I throw that back to Imam Azhar, I think I would ask for a little more clarification in the question. I know we're supposed to teach our children to pray, and you're supposed to encourage them to pray, but to have them just not pray when it's time, that's I don't know. I'll throw it over to Imam Azhar for the answer to that, and then he can work on his next 2 points.
Well, Assalamualaikum, Sister Laila. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your attentiveness and your questions. This engagement is exactly what we want from our listeners. Again, sometimes these type of questions that are posed either sporadically or they're part of a much greater discussion, they can be misconstrued or misunderstood. And thus, I was just telling the sisters class this morning here at the mosque how it's important that when we get those 1-minute WhatsApp reminders, they're not the video. Those videos are not the entirety of the program or the speech. There may be a summarization of it, or there may be a snippet of a much lengthier speech. What happens is it can be misconstrued or misused. Going back to the point that we shouldn't tell our children to pray when it's time to pray, why have we come to that point where we have to tell our children to pray? Why isn't it that we are praying and thus our children are following? I've noticed with my family and my kids, even my youngest one who's 3 years old, mashallah, when I'm praying, she'll come stand next to me and pray with me. But if I was to tell her or the other ones, go pray, they're less motivated to do so because they don't see anyone from the household who are also Muslims participating in the same thing. So when it comes to prayer, we have to create the environment of prayer because I need prayer as much as my child would need prayer. And thus, we need to create that environment where everyone is doing and less saying. There's a lot more preaching going on. Don't lie, we tell our kids, but then they catch us lying. We tell them, don't commit sins, but then we talk about committing a sin. So what the children are seeing is not just the two opposite ends of what's being said and what's being done, but they could smell that level of hypocrisy. And I don't want to use it in a negative way, but it is a negative word. But if I'm telling my child to do something that I'm not doing, to me, that's my level of hypocrisy. There's a difference that, look, I can't pray right now because my health doesn't allow me to, or I'm going to go to the mosque and pray, in comparison to constantly saying, did you do your prayer? Why didn't you pray? And while you're still there and you're in the house, you're not praying also. I think that's a result, that question or the answer from the scholar is a result of this culture that was created that I just described.
There are no other comments that she didn't expand, so I hope that answered your question, Layla. And in our last 7 minutes, let's throw it back to Imam Azhar so that he can make his final 2 points.
Well, thank you so much. So basically, the first point was telling them to do good for someone else while we're not channeling down that goodness. So again, when we channel it down, we are representative of that goodness. They will latch onto it and they'll only advance it and make it better. So alhamdulillah, channel your value system down to your children. Number 2, when we talk about tarbiyah is the Arabic word used for the equivalent of raising your children, that needs to have our involvement. So spread your value systems to your children. Number two, be involved in their lives. In America, the biggest problem seen here in America, and I keep on saying America because it happens here more than any other country I know of, whereas where we are outsourcing our responsibility. We've already outsourced who to please, but we've also outsourced the responsibilities of parenthood. Yes, the school teaches our children. Yes, the daycare takes care of our children. Yes, the doctor takes care of their medical needs. And yes, the pharmacy fills up their prescriptions. That's all said and done, but that does not exonerate us from our responsibility as parents. So being there for our children is the most difficult thing to do in our society because of two reasons. Our constant outsourcing of it made us feel exonerated. And in result of that, the second thing that has happened, that parent-child relationship has become so strained. I don't want to call it strained. It's become so weak. It's like my hand. I had fractured my hand and I was in a sling for 2 months. When I took it out, I couldn't even move it. And so my own body part was no longer a part of me. It was so foreign that it needed so much time and it needed so much protection that I remember asking the doctor, can I put the sling on again? In those days, of course, they put a sling over your shoulder type of thing and you just had a sling. He said, no, it needs to get the strength. If I keep it in a sling, hoping I'm protecting it, I'm actually harming it. So since there is no parent-child relationship, I don't want to say the word strain, I will take that word back. It's non-existent. That's why it becomes ever so hard to even sit with the children and talk with them. So number one, channel those values. Number two, be an active part of their life. And number three, and this is not the entire parenting summarized here tonight again, this is just sparking conversation. Engage with them in communication. Allow them to talk with you. You don't have to become your son or daughter's BFF for them to talk to you, because they can have as many friends as they want to have. The world is large. There can be 7 billion friends, or there can be 7 billion haters. There could be 3.5, 3.5, however you want to do the math. But there's only one father and one mother. So keeping that in context, they need to speak to us as we speak with them. So once we're actively involved in their lives, we could hear their criticism, we could hear their concerns, we could give them advice, and at the same time, we could admonish them on things. It's a two-way street. You can't just criticize. You should also commend. You cannot always admonish them, but you can also, give them kudos for something they do. I remember once I was performing a wedding ceremony where the mother gave the speech and said, my daughter's my BFF. And I'm like, no, she's not. She's not. Don't try to be hip or cool to be a parent. You are a parent by default. You don't have to be cool to do that. You just have to be yourself. So channel your values. If I don't have values, I need to incorporate them in my life to channel them. Number two, be there for them. And number three, open lines of communication, because there's going to be times in your child's life when they will truly need to reach out to someone. But if there is no relationship, they're not going to reach out to you. And if they reach out to someone their same age, that person is as immature in that matter as they are, and thus it's going to be more disaster on a disaster. So communication is very important. Parenting is an art. It is our key to the paradise. You have to go to the other end of the world to preach Islam. You can live it and also be instrumental within the four walls of your home. So that kind of summarizes the points regarding parenting. We always take questions offline, and we do answer your questions or concerns in regards to any topic that is on our podcast or on our live stream or on YouTube. So please, if you listen to this today, you have an opportunity at this moment to engage with us. If not, if you listen to this at another time, 2-3 months down the road, feel free to email us or to reach out to us, and we will be happy to answer your questions or concerns related to any given topic. Carl?
Okay, so Sister Layla came back and she said that you did answer her question, and she thanked you for that. And we have another question, which is a little confusing, and I'm trying to make sure I'm reading this right. And the first name, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce it, looks like Gannon. Gannon Scott is asking if our couch is for sale. And I'm not sitting on a couch, so I don't know that you're not sitting on a couch. So we're not sure what you're asking, but thanks for the comment. We're not going to be a hater on that. So, as Imam Azhar said, yes, absolutely. This podcast is here for you guys. It's partially why we stream it live on Facebook, is because we love the interaction. We love you guys to ask the questions right up front, so we can get that taken care of. We love the interaction, and that's why we post the poll on Twitter. So if you're not following us on Twitter, which is at VENN Network, go follow us, and you can take part in the poll. And if something's not in the poll that you'd like to see in the poll, comment on the post when it goes up. A couple of little housekeeping notes here before we wrap up for the evening. I just wanted to let you guys know that the Ven Network sweatshirt, according to Amazon, only has 22 more shelf days left, after which Amazon is going to discontinue that item. So if anybody wants one of those, wants to get it, shoot me or make a comment somewhere, and I'll get you the link for it. But yeah, unfortunately, if you don't get your Ven Network sweatshirt in the next 22 days, they're going to be gone. And it looks like this. And the proceeds go to help the network. It goes to help reach a larger audience. And of course, it goes to support the hosts as well. You can find more about that at vennetwork.org. You can also find the other programs from this lovely network over there at vennetwork.org. Make sure you like and subscribe to the videos and the newsletters and everything else. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because that's how things get better. The more subscribers we have, the better things get. I think, one last thing. We're also on Patreon. You can go over there, look for vennetwork.org, and be on the lookout for a poll with that shortly, because we're going to redo the Patreon and see what you guys would like to see as the reward levels over there. So that will be great. And that's it for me. Imam Azhar, any final thoughts?
Sorry there. No, thank you so much. Call on our listeners to join the movement of talking about real talk, sparking discussions and dialogues, and actually making sure that we uphold something that we feel is necessary to uphold with, of course, sane and stable backing. So in regards to that, once you all buy out the Ven Network t-shirt, we're going to start designing some epic t-shirts.
Sweatshirt.
Sweatshirt. We're going to be designing epic gear that we feel can be suitable not for raw Islam, but for the age that we live in. So we're going to inshallah put together some things that are going to turn heads, and people say, what does that say? Only because we live in a world that's real, and we want to interact with real people to uphold real things for all of us. So thank you all for your time, and thank you for listening. And back to you, Carl.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of another episode of Raw Islam with Imam Azhar. And until next week, we will say, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.